Mike, the small railway engine, always pulled the trains back and forth on the Yarsdale Railway. And Frank, the diesel shunter, always got the trains ready for Mike. Both engines enjoy the jobs they have, and they wouldn't want to have it any other way. One morning, Frank woke up to find that he was short on oil. The small controller wanted Mike to make a quick journey to the junction to collect some oil for Frank. "Be quick now," he said. "There's a lot of work to do today, and I want everything to run on time." "Yes, sir," he said, and with that, he headed off for the junction. When he got there, he was immediately coupled to the tankers, but they were still empty. Duck was coming to fill them up. "What's taking Duck so long?" thought Mike. "He should have been here 15 minutes ago." Eventually, Duck finally arrived. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "There was a broken signal, and the signalman wouldn't let me go until it was fixed." "It's all right," said Mike. "I'm just glad you're here now." As soon as the tanks were filled, Mike set off back to the sheds. He remembered what the small controller had said about running on time, and he didn't want to disappoint him. He went faster than he should have to make up for lost time. "Slow down," said his driver. "Something is sure to go wrong." "It won't," said Mike. "Besides, this is the only option we have if we want to be on time." Mike's driver was right. Something was about to go wrong. There was a log on the track that had the ability to derail small railway engines. Neither Mike or his driver saw it. That is, until it was too late. "Mike!" shouted his driver. "Look out!" Mike didn't hear him in time, and he got derailed by the log. An oil tanker also derailed, and it tipped over. The oil leaked out of the tanker and got onto the road next to the rails. No one was hurt, but Mike's driver was worried. "I hope no vehicles come down this road," he said. "Don't worry," said Mike. "This road is old and abandoned. We've got nothing to worry about." Meanwhile, Bertie the bus was on his way to pick up some passengers. Unfortunately, the road he usually took was closed for repair. "Don't worry," said his driver. "I know another way. Let's go." Unfortunately, the way Bertie's driver had in mind was the road Mike had crashed by. Bertie saw the accident up ahead. "Uh-oh," he said to himself. As he drove into the oil, he lost control of himself. The slipperiness caused him to tip over on his side. "Are you okay?" asked Mike. "I'm fine," said Bertie, "but now I can't pick up my passengers. Bulgy will have to take them, and they won't like that." Later, the small controller had Frank take him to see the mess. "Mike," he said, "you need to learn to be more careful. I'd rather have you arrive safely and be late than have you rush and derail like this. As punishment, you'll be doing the shunting in the yard while Frank takes the trains where they need to be." Frank was surprised. He rarely got to pull trains. "What?" exclaimed Mike. "For how long?" "Until you learn your lesson, no matter how long it takes." He then got into Frank and went back to the shed. That night, when they had lifted Mike back onto the rails, he puffed back to the sheds too. Frank was asleep. "Man," thought Mike to himself, "I hope the small controller doesn't make this a permanent change. I don't want to shunt forever." The next morning, Mike got woken up by a loud horn. It was Frank. "Time to wake up, Mike. My train needs to be shunted so I can pull it." Mike dreadfully puffed out of the shed to fetch some coaches. As soon as the coaches were ready, Frank took them to the station. "Hello, everybody," he said. "I'm glad to be your train today." But that wouldn't last for long. Frank has a short temper, and this sometimes gets him into trouble. He wanted to be careful, so he was going at a slow pace. "Why are you going so slow?" asked a passenger. "I could go faster if I were walking," said another. Frank had lost patience. He gave the coaches a bump. "You be quiet," he shouted, "or I'll stop and not move at all." Of course the passengers didn't take him seriously, and they grumbled on. "Very well then," he said, "I will not move for such fusspots." Everyone was very cross. His driver tried everything he could think of to make him move, but nothing worked. At last he called the bus department to pick up the passengers. Bertie, who had just been mended, came to take the passengers to their destination. Later that day, the small controller got many angry phone calls about Frank. It was then that he realized that he had made a terrible mistake. "I'm going to have a serious talk with Frank," he said as he listened to the screams of angry passengers. Afterwards, he went to do just that. "After what happened today, you will not be pulling passengers for a long time." He walked over to Mike. "You will be pulling trains again starting tomorrow." The next day when Mike was pulling his train, none of the passengers grumbled. They were afraid that if they did, the train would stop like yesterday. That night, when the day's work was over, Mike talked to Frank. "Even though you're not taking passengers anymore, I have to thank you for shutting them up. They used to complain a lot," he said. "No problem," said Frank. "I didn't like those passengers anyway. I guess sometimes things that start out bad turn into good." "Yeah, I guess so," said Frank. "At least now I'll never have to worry about pulling passengers again." The two had a good laugh and went to sleep wiser engines.